I said a couple things I wanted to talk about first. With your study guides that you made, the grade-wise, I set these up to where I am trying to do them to where everybody starts getting 100 on every single one. Like, it's not always teachers' goals for every assignment for everybody to be getting perfect on the assignment. Like, that is one of these. Like, I'm being picky right now so that you'll figure out what to do. If you guys do what you're supposed to do, I intend to start giving hundreds. People that are leaving stuff out now are just kind of figuring out what it is that I'm expecting of them. So Thursday, next week, don't know how many of you talked about it in advisory today. Next Thursday, the 23rd, you are in advisory from 8:45 in the morning until noon. Which means, regardless of anything, I will not see you that day. We're going to be in the middle of a chapter that is on probability. So I am going to go ahead and give you an assignment for that day, the day before. Days-wise, I don't have enough days to say we're just not going to do anything. So it'll just be like a homework assignment for that day. So if you come to school and you're sitting in a class for 3 hours, you'll do that during advisory. If you choose not to come to school that day, that'll just be your assignment for my class for that day. Yeah.
Will it count as an absence?
I double-checked purposely because I have a senior class, and I checked with the person who does attendance, and they told me it can't count towards a class because it won't be a class that they count attendance in.
Okay, perfect.
Now, that gets kind of funny with other things with, like, overall number of days absences or, like, sports and stuff, but I asked specifically, and they said they can't count that absence directly, like, towards my class because you weren't ever supposed to be in my class.
All right.
So just kind of keep that in mind about next week. I'll bring it up more when we get closer. All right, so problem we just worked on. Researchers are investigating the effectiveness of using a fungus to control the spread of cankerworms that destroy trees. Researchers will create 4 different concentrations of fungus mixtures, a 0, 1.25, 2.5, and 3.75 milliliters, or milliliters per liter. An equal number of these cankerworms will be placed into 20 individual containers. The group of cankerworms in each container will be sprayed with one of the 4 mixtures, and the researchers will record the number of cankerworms that are still alive in each container 1 week after spraying. A little disappointed with this first one because of a problem we did yesterday, and clearly it didn't click. Let's go backwards starting at E. What is the response variable?
The spread of cankerworms destroys trees.
I would write word for word exactly what this problem says right here at the end. The number of cankerworms that are still alive in each container 1 week after spraying. Now, is that extremely descriptive? Yes. But be wording specific. If the problem gives you something, if you start to look for word, it makes things easier on you. Now skipping to B, what are the factors? So factors are generic. Levels are what are the specifics of that generic category. So what generic category are we implementing? Concentration of fungus mixtures. So this is my generic category, concentrations of fungus mixtures. What are my levels?
0, 1.25.
So how many treatments are there? What is the written definition of the way I have you write experimental units? The smallest unit to which the treatment is applied. This problem went over I took a problem that was an AP exam question, and then I added in specifically cankerworms so that we had a specific type to deal with for conversation, and then I just changed the questions that I asked. I thought this is one that they decided to change and make more obvious what the experimental units were versus the one that we talked about yesterday because they probably had so many issues. This one, straightforward, comes out and says the group of cankerworms in each container will be sprayed with one of the 4 mixtures. So it is literally saying the unit to which the treatment is applied is what? The container. So the experimental units are not the cankerworms themselves, but the containers, or the containers of cankerworms. And that's the part where I thought more people would have caught on to that after yesterday with the shrimp example. Yeah.
So just to clarify, in our design, the first thing we write should be our
Experimental units, yes. All right, so experimental units here would be the containers of cankerworms, or containers is fine. So F, this is what I was talking about. Like, I didn't really know how to ask this, but I wanted to be able to have this conversation. So there are, with blinding, it can be blinding or it can be double blind. So there are 2 different blindings I could be looking for. The first one is, are we blinding the subjects? Or experimental units. Can I blind the experimental units in this situation? No. The container doesn't need to be told which treatment it's getting. The cankerworms don't need to be told which treatment they're getting. So that aspect we can't even blind. Now, the other side of blinding is we can be blinding with who? The researchers or the people doing the data, that aspect of it. Could we still blind on that side of it? Yes. Would it probably still be necessary? They're just counting the number that are dead, so really they probably can't put much bias in there, but it's still not a bad thing to do. So I kind of just wanted to be able to have that conversation that blinding can be of the experimental units, the people doing the research or data, or both. It could only be the research side of things, yes. And like I said, it's not technically necessary because you're only counting, but yes, still yes. So is this a valid experiment? So this one I do want to write out. I'm just going to leave that off. So what is one of our 3 principles of experimental design? Control. So let's write, does control exist here?
Yeah.
How?
The 0. The concentration.
Okay, so that is a control what? Our control group was which one?
0.
And why do we have it?
Here. Or actually has a baseline.
And some people say baseline, some people say compare. I just always say baseline to compare to. Covers both. Yeah. I can't remember. I just deleted it. What did it actually say? Describe each of them.
Address all 3 experimental designs individually.
I would be a little bit more specific, but this is what I want. I'm telling you right now that this is what I want you to do. Is that the only aspect of control? What else?
The number of cankerworms.
The number of cankerworms in each container, and what else? You're overthinking one that just because it's called this isn't as specific. This before just said insects, and I specifically went and put in a specific one on purpose.
Oh yeah, they're all cankerworms.
So they're all cankerworms. Why are we control? What is our reason for those?
Should be able to compare them all together.
There will be no variation because of the fact that they aren't.
Attempt to eliminate. I want to write it the exact way I wrote it. Get out your printed sheet that we wrote on. Because I want to make sure that, or the notes that go with that one when we wrote 3 principles of experimental design. Because I want to keep my wording exact when I go back and forth between things.
It says effects and extremes variables.
When we wrote this, I wasn't sure if I wrote variation, bias, or extraneous variables there, so I want to keep that the same. So I am attempting to eliminate that extraneous lurking variable, which all the answers you were saying are correct, like the confounding and all that stuff. I just wanted to word it the same way I word it somewhere else, so that regardless of where you're looking, you're literally looking at the exact same thing. So there's my first aspect of control, which means yes, I have it.
And do we have to write it out like that with the arrows and stuff?
I want to see those things. Like I want to see this is where it is in context. This is why we do it. What's another aspect of external replication? Is there replication?
I said yeah, because there's 20 containers and 4 treatments, so they're doing it for like
So each treatment
is done.
what did we write for why do we do replication?
Logical natural variation.
So would you say what was the last 2 words you said?
Natural variation.
So natural variation. I think that's confusing. I mean, natural variation is fine. We're doing the natural variation so that there's less. The variance is by. Well, I put variance by chance. Variance, not by chance.
To lessen it or to
So the written part that we do for this is we want the chance to not be just chance variation. And what's our last one?
randomization.
I don't think that's what I wrote for replication for that. I don't know. Maybe I was looking at the wrong place for where I said wrote it. Where is randomization? The randomly what to what?
They're randomly assigned
To the treatments. To the fungus treatments. Oh, that is. Variation, but yeah, okay. So, assign versus selection. Randomly assign. Fungus mixtures to each container. And why do we do randomization?
to assign them.
So we want the groups to be what?
Bias.
We're trying to eliminate bias by having the groups what? We want the groups we want them to be similar between. Let's say. I'm right the way I wrote that there. We said attempts to eliminate bias by hopefully creating roughly equivalent groups. So I'm okay with eliminate bias in groups. Alright, so the only thing we have left is the design and written part. So where do I start? This right here is always my what?
So what's the
Yes. Yes, so it had all three, so yes, it's valid. So yes, it is valid because it has all three. What always goes right here of an experimental design regardless? Experimental units. So what are experimental units? And this is where I was saying some of you actually wrote containers here, but then you wrote cankerworms earlier. These should match. Do I care anything about the containers before I put them in treatments? No, which means this is a what? Completely randomized, which means I go straight from here to random assignment.
Wait, can you say that again?
I don't care anything about them before I put them in treatments, which means I go straight to random assignment, which means it's completely randomized.
Who would you not go straight to?
Blocking. So it is random assignment. Now from here, how many do I branch to? I would have probably taken time to write a key here. Treatment 1, or you could write group 1, 0 milligrams or milliliters per liter, whichever way you want to do that. But I know that how many are going to be in here? Because I took my 20 containers and split it into 4, there should be 5 in each. This would be my next group with 1.25 milliliters per liter, and so forth. With that, I'll be writing all those. And then here, they're all going to come back together. What's my first word? Always. What always comes right after that? In general, your response variable, which we said was number of cankerworms still alive in each container 1 week after spraying. You can condense that here because you have it written somewhere else. Compare cankerworms alive in each container between fungus mixtures or fungus treatments. I'm not going to write out a whole lot right there. I think y'all are okay with that. It's hard to see on that anyway. Alright, so I'm going to talk through the written part without writing it. What's the easiest way to do this one? What's the way I always suggest? Paper and a hat. So what's my first thing I'm going to do? Somehow put these containers in order and give them numbers. What do I do with those numbers? Write it on equally sized slips of paper. Do what with those paper? Put them in a hat. Put it in a container, put it in a hat. What do I do once in a hat? How do I select them? These are the things that are like the key things I look for. Equal size, put them in a hat, mix them up without looking. So I should have said order, assign, numbers. Yeah. So put the containers in order and assign them each a unique number 1 to 20. Equally sized piece, write them on equally sized piece of paper, put them in a hat, mix them up without looking, select them 1 at a time. What would my next written thing be? The first 5 numbers. The containers associated with the first 5 numbers are what? Place in the group 1. Or however you wrote your chart. Or receive treatment 1. Or receive treatment A. Whichever way you wrote it, make sure they match. The next 5 get treatment 2. Next 5 get treatment 3. And the last 5 get treatment 4. Yes.
Would you have to talk about like keeping them out of the hat?
Oh yes, without replacement. That was the one thing I forgot to write. Thank you.
And did you say you were fine with us saying like the first 5 go in group 1, the next 5 group 2 dropped out?
Yeah.
For like putting them in order, can we say what order we put them in? Or like for this, I don't know how you.
I know, so like, I talked about this in my other class yesterday. If it's something weird like this, just be like, in order in the room from left to right. Because you're saying, I knew that I needed to do something with them to assign them, but I'm not gonna be like, well, how did you walk in the room? Like, you're saying, hey, I need to do something to assign them, but I don't care about specifically how you do it. Questions with that one? Okay, so the last problem, this is what I want to test to see if you were getting the right stuff out of it. So, deforestation and hunting have limited habitats for the Madagascar's lemur populations. Currently, there's 15 species, and they have become extinct. A researcher hopes to plant a new type of bush in the area to help sustain the lemur populations, especially those of you watching the video and not in class. I did say that I should have typed in the fact that it says before he begins, he must show that lemurs will remain healthy on the new food source. I should have written it more specific, but I want you testing new food source versus old food source. So he believes that lemur health due to diet may differ with species, but not with gender. So it's giving you that sentence to say that we're definitely going to do what?
Split by species.
And so this is testing, do you get how we block or why we block? So our response variable is what? In general.
Lemur health.
So in our list, there are 2 variables that are in the chart that's given on the piece of paper. And what are they?
Gender and species.
So does gender impact the response? Does it say?
It says it doesn't.
And yeah, you're right. It probably should
So
have.
I thought we were supposed to test it anyway.
Yeah.
Like to.
I would be more specific about that then. I get what you're saying. So then, but what about this?
Yeah.
And now I will say this kind of is how vague they are on the AP exam, but I totally get why y'all went that direction, and I will on a test be more specific than that. Or if that's something y'all want to ask, like I would answer that kind of question during the test. So we blocked for the variable that what? That does impact. So basically it's saying we don't care anything about their gender because that's not going to change anything that we're dealing with. So because species impacts response variable, we want to block based on that variable. So where do I start here? How many? What do I do from here? How many? So I cared something about the lemurs before I put them into groups, and it only gave us 2 species, right? So you could write this as species, but these are the, was it black and mouse?
Yeah.
How many black lemurs were there?
6.
Oh, it ended up being 6 and 6. So just to recall, once I do this, I am essentially looking at this whole section right here like it's a what? Like it's completely randomized. So then I go into, from here to what? Random assignment. And then from here, I split how many? Based on what I told you. 2, one of them is the old food source, one of them the new food source. You need to write more than this here, but old food, new food.
We could have just tried new food source.
You would need it like, you can probably explain that well enough in the written part.
That'd be great. And could we just put in one and in two?
Yeah, and so this is a discussion, I can't remember if we had it this class or my other class, I think it was my other class, where I chose to call this one treatment 1, 2, 3, 4, so I didn't get them confused.
Yep.
And then somebody in my second class decided they preferred doing it the other way and calling it treatment 1, treatment 2, treatment 1, treatment 2, so that when they went and did their written part, they could say, repeat the steps the exact same way because they ended up having the same number. Because like these go into old food or new food, so I can call this treatment 1, treatment 2, so that these can also go into treatment 1, treatment 2, old food, new food. And so they chose to keep them the same because of that. It's all the same. It's just whichever way you prefer writing it. Questions at this point?